The following program is being brought to you on the Voice America Business Channel. For more information about our network and to check our additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericabusiness.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the following program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
You're logged on to Magnet Investing with Jordan Kimmel. If you would like to call in with a question or comment for Jordan or his guest, dial toll-free at 866-472-5790. Once again, that number is 866-472-5790. Let's get back to another segment of Magnet Investing. Here's Jordan Kimmel.
And welcome back to Magnet Investing with me, your host, Jordan Kimmel. And longtime listeners of this show know this is way more about the stock market at Magnet. It's about the entrepreneur. It's about all facets of business. And it's an absolute pleasure right now to bring on Rich Killian. Rich actually hosts his own show on Voice America, is a true entrepreneur. We want to hear all about what Rich does, what he's about. And Rich, thanks so much for joining us today.
Absolutely, Jordan. Thanks for having me on the show.
All right. Well, really, Rich, you know, the M in Magnet stands for management. It's really about the person behind the organization. So before we get into actually your business itself, it'd be really great to hear more about you, your start, where you've come from, and what actually led you to what you're actually doing today at the American Business Person, Inc.
Absolutely. Well, you know, I kind of started investing, in the stock market when I was in college. You know, when I turned 21, whatever, had some money saved up from the Army, a couple years in there. And basically, you know, this was before you can really do any day trading and stuff online. This is back in the early 90s, what have you. And, I ran into a problem, and I'm sure some of your listeners probably feel maybe the same way if they put too much faith into their, stockbroker or what have you. But it was one of those deals back in the, the IT boom, everybody was getting into tech stocks, and I bought in, to this stock that was recommended by my stockbroker at the time. And, one of those deals where it was I think like an $8 stock, something like that, over the counter, within a week, the thing just dropped to $1. And, here we go. I'm just getting, my feet wet in investing. I'm just, young with a little bit of money, but, not a lot. Maybe $10,000, something like that is what I had. Long story short, here we go. I take somebody's advice and, you kind of lose most of it. Well, to make a long story short, I had this, just one of those weird premonitions, and I know you shouldn't invest on emotions at all, absolutely. But when I was young, you didn't know. I'm new to this. I had this dream. I just had this, like weird thing that the stock was going to shoot up the same when I was in. So, thought to myself, well, let me cost average this thing. Let me buy a few thousand more shares, so that I can quadruple what I have, and maybe hedge that bet type thing. So I called this stockbroker up in the morning from my college studio apartment, and I'm thinking I'm cool at the time. I got the cordless phone, walking around. It's just really cool. Phones are big, so I'm walking around, acting like a big shot, saying, "All right, I want you to buy 4,000 more shares of this, blah 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 blah." Well, I go to class, come back. I did log on to my 14.4 bytes per minute or whatever, when the old dial-up.
Different days, yep.
Exactly. And finally, after about 10 minutes, I get onto my Quicken account or whatever I had at the time, and the stock did jump up. This thing was up to like $40, something like that. I was, how you get that nervous feeling in your stomach where you start shaking? You're like,
that's a good nervous feeling, though.
It's like, holy cow, what do I do here? I immediately call this guy up. I won't mention the name of the company. They're still around, but pretty big firm, actually. But, call this guy up. Joe, what do I do here? Do I sell? Do I ride this out? I'm looking at, I went from having about a $10,000 portfolio to about $200,000, in a matter of a day, and it was crazy. He goes, well, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I said, the order that I want you to fill, this morning, we're up $200,000. What do I do? He goes, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to put that order in. Now, tell me if that wouldn't bother some people out there. So, I don't know. It was just a pretty rude awakening, and literally the next day I drove up from college, about 5-hour drive to this guy's office. Was polite, but I thanked him, closed my account, and moved on. So I kind of had a bad experience, off the get-go, and then I started doing some research on real estate, and and maybe starting my own business, because at least I can control that, and it wasn't outside of my reach for handling my own money. And that was basically where I got the start to think, maybe I should do something on my own. Obviously keeping a portfolio is still important, but man, I just, that was a blow.
It's almost an amazing story there, Rich. I mean, there's a lot to tack on in there. That's a amazing beginnings. It says a lot, though, about your own instincts. It also says a lot how you deal with people in adversity. And now I understand you come to own some 24 companies. Is that possible?
Well, it is possible. I mean, it's a fact. But yeah, what happened was, shortly after I graduated from college, from my undergrad, I started my first company, and it was actually a real estate company. But I bought my first piece of property, and it was just to hold the property. I started a few more businesses after that, but coming back to my first company, which is actually Prospect Equities, which is now my biggest company, I started off as it was a real estate holding company, and then I switched it into an actual brokerage about 2 years later. But what had happened was when I started this real estate company, and I was a one-man show. I worked for a few years for a bigger firm. Then I just went out and did my own thing. Then I started hiring on some agents. Well, I had a different concept that was kind of unique to the Chicagoland area anyway. And I'm licensed in a couple states, New York being one of them as well, as a broker. But, I had this idea of almost like a RE/MAX type style where it was 100% commission, but a much, much lower, fee to the agent.
Okay.
It was, I don't want to call it discount. It's discount to the agents, but not to the public per se, which gives our agents, our employees, if you will, the leverage to, make their own decisions and have more freedom to do kind of what they want marketing-wise and, charging commissions and so on and so forth. So it caught on. By the end of the first full year of being in business, I started taking on agents in summer of 2002. By the end of 2003, first full year, we were up to 85 agents. So I thought that was actually pretty good. The concept was working. Well, meanwhile, I'm starting to think, well, what else am I leaving on the table? There's obviously mortgage involved with, real estate. There's title insurance. There's other ancillaries. There's construction. There's demolition. There's all these other ancillaries. So I started just either starting other companies to complement it, or buying up smaller companies to complement it, and then just making them bigger. And here we are about 10 years later or so, and I've amassed 24 companies with that.
No, it's a fantastic story. It's really a story, as I hear it, as an entrepreneur, someone with their ears open, someone who's kind of willing to listen to the market, if you will. And all this is taking place, by the way, I'm guessing, during at one point, both a real estate frenzy and then a real estate correction. Am I right?
100% correct. And kind of the neat thing was, I was charging these lower fees, even for mortgages. I basically based my concepts on not beating people up for fees, okay? And if I could do a volume concept, then that would, extend out to a lot more people, and, 10 dimes add up to a dollar type theory. So my point is that when everybody was just making a killing in the real estate market in the, call it the 03, 04, 05, era, refi boom, all that stuff. I mean, everybody's just charging fees left and right, making a ton of money. Nobody really cared because everybody else is, people are buying 2 and 3 houses that probably shouldn't afford. But
dangerous environment for sure.
Absolutely. But see, I was consistent with my modest fees, and I was making money too, but I wasn't making the volume of money that some of these other guys were charging with, just 5-10 times the fees, what have you. So what helped me, though, what was kind of neat, is that when the market somewhat crashed, the bubble came kind of bursting here, kind of started in about 07, 08, I was still getting my modest fees. And when all these big guys that were charging the bigger fees, be it a mortgage company, be it a title company, real estate brokerage, what have you, they couldn't handle the bills. They were at a level where they couldn't recover from a blast like that as far as an income reduction, and they started closing shops. Well, these agents, still have licenses. They got to go somewhere. So they're looking at, somebody like my concept that, hey, well, he's still around. He's still plugging away at his, 10 dimes add up to a dollar theory, and we'll join him.
Right.
So
hey, Rich, let me ask you a question. I'm not sure how your day looks, how crushed you are, and how busy you are. There's a whole lot more I'd love to cover with you. We're coming up to a sponsor break here. Do you have time to join us for another segment?
Absolutely.
Okay, so why don't we kind of, I don't want to lead into a question right before commercial break. Maybe we'll take a minute here. I know there's a lot you're involved in, but Rich, if someone wants to know more about you, I know we'll talk about your, the real estate and what you're doing, but if someone wants to contact you directly, ask you for advice, use your professional services, how do they find you? How do they reach out to you? Give us your contact information here.
Yes, go to richkillian.com, RichKillian.com, and it's got all my emails and stuff there. You can check me out on theamericanbusinessperson.com as well. That's our talk show. But probably the best way is richkillian.com, and just you can find the email right there if you click the link.
Well, fantastic. Rich, you're making it easy on everybody. That's a sign of a good businessman. We're with Rich Killian right now, the American Business Person, Inc. We'll take a quick break here, Rich, and then we'll delve more into your business and where you're getting your energy and your drive and how you're helping all these folks. We'll be right back after this quick break.
Okay.